Mixing with Mike, plugin of the week comes from Softube. It's the TubeTech SMC 2B. This is an emulation of a TubeTech hardware multi-band compressor, and it sounds really amazing. It's part of the new TubeTech Complete 2 collection. A couple of updates there. The CL1B Mach 2 now has the old version built in on a switch. There's also this updated here, similarly in the channel strip and the EQs, so all of that included in the collection, but today we'll focus on this one. Let's go over the settings here. On the left, what we have are the crossover settings between the high band, mid band, and low band. On the low band, you can take and multiply the frequency by 4. So under normal circumstances, the hardware unit will go 60 to 300, and the hardware unit also has a ×4 switch, which will allow you to extend that range all the way up to 1.2K. The high frequency goes from 1.2K up to 6K. They all have the same threshold, ratio, attack, release, gain. If you hold the shift key, you can adjust them all at the same time. So if you're looking for a link button, the link button here is for the channel link. Otherwise, you can make your adjustments just by holding the shift key and then make individual adjustments accordingly. Let's see, reset that. So we have that. We have a gain reduction meter here, separate output gains for each channel. There's a balance control. This will balance, if you're in stereo mode, it'll balance the left-right. So if it's off a little bit, it'll help you rebalance that. Probably more useful in mid-side mode, where for most things where you can put more information in the side or lean a little bit more towards the center. It only goes 1.5 dB, so it's meant to be a pretty subtle adjustment. And then there's an overall output gain. You can put the unit in or out by clicking on the switch down here for bypass. This also has an external sidechain. Now, if you set up a sidechain, you just click the external here, feed whatever in. It still goes through the crossovers. So it doesn't make it the same for all 3 channels. Obviously, it would make sense to go through the crossovers, just so you know that. You can make it mid-side processing by hitting the mid-side processing button, and you can keep the channels linked, or if you want to operate, make adjustments separate from the left and right, you can do so by clicking on the left and right buttons here. Otherwise, the channels will stay linked and you'll only see one set of settings. Down here, you can mute the individual bands. This will mute the low band, mid band, high band. This can be helpful for basically tuning in the crossover point. Crossover points are 12 dB per octave between the bands. And there's a wet-dry control down at the bottom. You can resize down here. You get all the extra setting meters and all of that sort of stuff if you want it. And all of the settings for all those things, including tooltips. If that drives you crazy, you can turn that on or off, and other settings here that you would normally find for Softube. All right, let's dig into it. Oh, preset menu is up here, and then you can open up the preset collection and make your options through there, or test some things out, see if it works. Let's go through it. I had just run a little bit of music through it. We'll start by just kind of quickly setting up something and you know, try a couple different approaches, kind of run it through its paces a little bit. If you have the setting set up here, you should see the settings here. So if I adjust the ratio, it's you know, 2.8 to 1. You can go all the way down. If I hold the shift key here, 1.5 to 1 up to 10 to 1. All right, so you have a range of stuff there. Let's maybe start with like a 2 to 1, something along those lines here. And let's start by doing sort of a slow attack, fast release. The attack time runs 3 milliseconds up to 200 milliseconds on the attack, and the release runs 60 milliseconds up to 2 seconds. So it's a little bit different than the CL1B that goes to 0.5 milliseconds for attack and has a longer release time up to 10 seconds. So this is a little bit tighter, kind of meant more for mix bus or stem return for drums, something along those lines. Mastering, it would work well for that. Let's run it through its paces here a little bit. can hear, just that, just quickly setting it up. It has that classic TubeTech sound. And this actually worked out pretty well. Just to kind of show you quickly, we could fine tune in these crossover points here just by muting the other bands and tuning it in here. I think by default, it looks like it's set to 175. Let's see. Maybe get that focused a little bit more on the kick drum, and then focus the mid band here to get most of the transients, particularly the snare. And then I'll leave enough of the snare on the top end just to get so we have something to trigger it. Okay, sound looks like there's enough there. All right, let's unmute everything and make some adjustments. Now, an alternate approach to this might be to kind of work this in with a faster attack and kind of a slower release here. Let's see if I can drum something up here this way. I'll have to lower the threshold here. Now I can kind of work this a little bit more. I'm just kind of keeping the settings here just to kind of give you an idea of what it sounds like. Also have the wet-dry control if I want to get more aggressive with it. But in this type of thing, I can actually make it more aggressive in different areas. So for example, let's say that on the low end here, I'm going to slow down the attack, kind of allow that to kind of breathe a little bit more, and maybe slow down the release. And see if we can kind of control the low end a little better. Kind of tune it in that way just to kind of get it to pump the way that I want. Just kind of get that to kind of pump a little bit more there for the transients, and then let's see if I can smooth out the top end here. And then I could, oh, this is all in mid-side mode. Ended up doing that by accident. So here, let's play with that since, the difference here between mid-side, it'll apply the same to both. So in this case, it won't be any different unless we start to adjust settings independently. But it can use now the balance control here, maybe to lift a little more energy out of the sides. Right, so you could hear like just the openness and the depth, and just having that ability to sort of control the individual bands just allows you to really add such an amazing dynamic to a mix. Or you could do the same for just drums or a drum and bass stem. However, you sort of want to glue something together, and that's the power of multi-band compression. Really super cool. Sounds amazing. Great job as always by Softube on this emulation. I personally, I don't have familiarity. I've never used the actual hardware unit, but I expect I have a lot of experience with many of the other TubeTech products, particularly the EQs and the CL1B. So I'm very familiar with the sound, and this seems to fit right in with all of that. Great emulation, very cool. Instantly part of my toolkit now for the mix bus or for mastering. Really cool one. Plugin of the week by Softube. It's the TubeTech SMC2B.